So, MrLetGo, you said that your father wasn't in your life. So, like, do you think the anger towards a lot of mothers with black men stem from they're mad at their moms for picking crappy fathers for them, and they hold that resentment, like, why did you choose this man to sleep with and make a child? Now I gotta grow up in this situation because you couldn't choose better. Is that why a lot of men are like really just angry at like single moms and bad decision makings, because it's like a trigger for them because they wish that their mom chose better so they could have had a better dad and not the dad that walked out on them?
Well, I want you to think about just your question overall. The answer isn't being angry and resentful. It's seeing a system not work. When you see a system go wrong, now I see why this is the way it is, and you get a little deeper in it. It's not resentment. It's a system that doesn't work, which is having a baby by somebody. So it's not being resentful. It's looking at what went wrong. What put these two people in this situation? Not getting married, not committing to each other. That pushes me to say, hey, I believe in family. Stop having fathers, babies or whatever, because I can speak as a kid of a single mother. But the thing about it is the systematic part of it is the mother and the father not getting married and not putting together a stable household. It's not resentment, it's system.
That perception of how you view women, how you view their decisions, how you view single mothers, how you view certain situations is because it's coming from a hurt place.
Let's stop right there real quick. She says, I come from a hurt place. Say I did come from a hurt place. What would this hurt place look like? Being raised by a single mother with no daddy? So if she's right, and that is a hurt place, wouldn't this mean that a lot of you ladies are creating the same hurt place in your own household? What is your son going through? What is your daughter going through? Because your child doesn't have a daddy, just like I didn't have a daddy. So the same way you ladies can sit around and say, MrLetGo, you come from a hurt place. If that's actually true, you're literally admitting my point. Being raised by a woman without a dad is a hurt place. And this simply means you are habitually creating a hurt place for your own child. See, I'm an adult with a pretty great life. So if you think about hurt places, don't think about my hurt place. If I did come from a hurt place, the number one thing we got to pay attention to is your child's hurt place. So overall, I'm out of my hurt place, but your son or your daughter is still there.
No, it's not coming from a hurt place. It's coming from a hurt system. It's coming from a hurt system. It's coming from a hurt system. I see these children go through the same things that I went through, and I'm like, yo, let's get it together. It's a system that still is going on 20, 30 years later.
See, this is the type of conversation I have with a typical single mother. Instead of acknowledging the problematic pattern, I'll say it again, problematic pattern and the problematic behavior of the single mothers doing this to their children, the first thing she'll rather do instead of acknowledging the actual problem is to defend single motherhood. See, when you're a single mother, the only thing you can do because you're a single mother is defend single motherhood. It's almost like somebody going to prison 3 times, right? Person goes to prison 3 times and somebody says, hey, why do you keep going to prison? How about you change your life and stop doing the things that are causing you to go to prison? The first thing that particular person is going to do is justify their behavior. He's going to justify his behavior of committing crimes instead of acknowledging his own lifestyle and behavior and saying, hey, I'm exhibiting a certain pattern here that keeps putting me behind the 8 ball and putting me in a bad situation over and over again. The same thing with single motherhood. Women love to do 2 particular things: justify their behavior and vilify men who talk about their bad behavior. So if men are pointing out a huge problem in our communities, the single mother epidemic that started in the 70s and 80s is way worse than a crack epidemic that started in the 70s and 80s, and way worse than the epidemic that started in the 80s. And on top of that, the epidemic is affecting everybody instead of a certain group of people, because the majority of Black American women are single mothers. But if you look at the two other epidemics, that part isn't affecting the majority of Black people like single motherhood is. So going back to what I said, me being raised in a single mother household, I can easily empathize and relate with these young boys and girls growing up in single mother households. And it's single mother households, not single father households, that's the biggest problem. And before I go any further, let me just play a video that would give you an understanding the difference between single mother households and single father households, as well as two-parent households.
90% of all homeless and runaway children, 85% of children and teens with behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. Let me read that stat to you one more time. 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 85% of children and teens with behavioral disorder come from fatherless homes. That is a very, very big number. Next, fatherlessness likewise has a direct link to teen pregnancy and sexual activity. Roughly 70% of teenage pregnancies come from women raised in a fatherless home. 70% of teenage pregnancies comes from fatherless homes. Fatherless kids are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated, 20 times more. If a man and a wife raise a child, they're less likely to end up in jail, but they have the same chances as children raised by just their father. But they have the same chances as children raised by just their father. But they have the same chances as children raised by just their father.
So with all that being said, these are actual stats and these are actual lives that are being affected. So the typical woman that keeps doing the same crap that her sister, her mother, her aunt, her co-workers did, this is the actual pattern. Single motherhood is a dysfunctional pattern that nobody wants to talk about. I'll say that again. Single motherhood is a dysfunctional pattern that nobody seems to want to talk about. All women want to do is defend the traumatizing dysfunctional pattern of single motherhood instead of acknowledging it as an actual problem. So then we can actually focus on ending it. Because once men and women get to the point where we can all acknowledge that single motherhood is the biggest problem in our communities, and it's the number one thing that we're doing to ourselves, but the things that we're doing to ourselves are the actual problems. And when we all acknowledge that, we can finally start working on a solution to stop it instead of arguing back and forth about whose fault is what, who's hurt, who's mad, forget all that. Let's end the single mother epidemic by acknowledging it as a problem and focusing on ending it. If more women were to start valuing their wombs and stop just giving it away to any random dude that wants it and start requiring marriage, our Black communities will be full of men and women raising their children together in married households, in married households, in married households. The sad thing about it is we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to acknowledge the actual problem because we want to continue arguing, because the truth is our women would rather continue justifying their own behavior and keep having fatherless babies and keeping our young boys and young girls traumatized for the next 5-6 generations. Let me know what y'all think in the comments.